So today, we're going to see exactly how long it takes to set up the RS1000 for everyday work. Stay tuned. Hi guys, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Michael and I am the woodworker for MK Designs. And yeah, today I'm going to show you we're going to see exactly how long it takes to set up the RS1000 Pro from Nextwave for everyday work. I mean, it's going to take a little bit longer to set up for dados and stuff, but it does any other time. And the reason I'm doing this is because on my last video where I introduced the RS1000, a lot of people complained that it seems like it takes a long time to set up. And that got me to thinking, does it? I'm not going to answer that question right now. I can give you my opinion on it and everything. Now, I would have loved to have done a comparison between a normal router table and this router lift and fence system, but I no longer have my old router table anymore. So yeah, I can't do a comparison, but I can show you exactly how long it takes me to do this, and then you can do the comparison with yours and see if it's comparable or which is faster. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to show you how we're going to time it first. I'm going to do it once to time it, and I've got a stopwatch on my watch, so we're going to go that route with it. So one other note before we actually get to it. Now, on those comments, they're not specifying whether they're talking about the setup that I'm doing today, or if they're talking about the initial setup. If you're talking about the initial setup, it does take longer to initially set it up than if you were to go and purchase from Woodcraft, Rockler, Lowe's, Home Depot, somewhere like that, a pre-assembled, or not really assembled, but a pre-built router table. But it is just as quick, or takes just as long, whichever way you want to look at it, if you were to go and buy a router lift and then build your own table and fence system. The pre-built stuff, like the Bosch table, I'll see if I can't find a picture of it and show you what I'm talking about here. It's the one that I used to have. There's several of them like that out there. Those, you pretty much just mount a router into it, run your cables, or you assemble it first, then you mount your router into it, and you're good. You're set up. You're ready to go. But if you go buy a router lift and a router fence system, like I think it's Incro that makes one. I'll find out and I'll post that here as well. Those you have to build the table around it, just like you do with this system. This is a router lift and fence system in one, and it is computer controlled versus manual control. That's the difference. But other than that, it's exactly like those systems, except for one other difference. One other difference is this fence has a single point to move it back and forth, whereas most of the fence systems out there have at least two. And that's one big thing that people don't seem to understand, especially when they're first starting out, is you think that because you're using a round bit, you don't need your fence parallel. Now, there are some operations out there where you would want your fence not parallel, or not perfectly perpendicular to the bit, and that would be like joining operations and stuff. If you're using your router table to make joints, or to joint your boards and the edges of your boards and things of that nature, you would want it off just slightly. And there is a way you can do that with this system. I'm not quite sure yet if I'm going to do a video on how to do it with this system or not, but you do need your fence to be perpendicular to your bit. I'm not going to go into explaining the physics behind it. I can understand how a lot of people get confused and think that it doesn't really matter, but it actually does. And with this system, once you have your initial setup, when you're building the table for it, and you make sure everything's square and perpendicular like it's supposed to be, coplanar, however you want, whichever way you want to phrase it, then you never have to worry about it again unless things come loose. And as long as you do maintenance on it, nothing should ever come loose. So yeah, there is that. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. That's what this video is all about. I know a lot of people don't like really long videos, so I'm gonna make this as short and sweet as possible, and we're just gonna get to the point. So let's get to it. All right, so at first I'm going to just do it, and we're gonna time it. I've got a little stopwatch on my watch here, and we're gonna see how long it actually takes, and then after that I'll go back through and explain to you exactly what I'm doing. So if we're ready, set, go. And stop. So 1 minute, 7 seconds. So yeah, that's not too shabby. It's pretty quick actually. I'm set, I'm ready to go. That's all I have to do is turn the router on and run my board across it. Okay, so now to show you exactly what I'm doing. I'm gonna try and keep this turned up, and we'll see how it works just so you can see it. So the first thing I need to do is I need to move everything back to where it was. So make sure you hit the right button. All right, move it back. And then I'm gonna take that off, drop my bit down below. So that's the first step. You gotta make sure your bit is down below. Now, I didn't include actually changing out the bit because that's not any different than any other router table. You're gonna have to loosen up the collet, put in the bit you want, take out the bit you have to, put in the bit you want, tighten it back down, and then the only other extra step you need to do is you need to drop the bit below the surface. But as you can see, that doesn't take very long at all. So that's above the surface, that's below the surface. Okay? Now, what I need to do is I need to calibrate 0. So what I'll do is I'll go in here to apps, I'll go to calibration. Now when you first turn it on, that's the only option you have under here. You can't do anything else until you actually calibrate it, because all these other options down here actually use the calibration in order to get everything set the way you need it to. So you want to go into calibration, press to run, and then run bit calibration. That's the one I always run first, even though the fence is listed first. I run the bit calibration first. If you need to change the diameter of your bit, here's where you would do it. You hit bit diameter right here. Let me get this a little closer so you can see it. So you hit bit, you press bit diameter right here, and you go in and you set the diameter of your bit. Now I have a 1/2 inch bit in there, so I don't need to change that. So I'm going to tap run bit calibration, and I press to run. This app requires the touch plate accessory, which the RS1000 comes with the touch plate accessory. So press OK. Now in here, if you forgot to bring your bit up above or drop it below for the bit calibration, I should say, then you would go into controls, and that's where this is where you would drop your bit down below. So once I have that done, I press OK. Now it wants to confirm that the touch plate connection is valid. So what I'm going to do, this is the touch plate. You got two ends. You got a little magnet end and you got a plate. I'm going to connect the magnet to the bit down below so that it doesn't interfere with the touch plate. And then I'm simply going to take the touch plate and touch the bit. You see how that turns red? That means there's a good connection. So when I remove the plate, it comes up to press OK to begin movement. From here, I'm going to put the plate on the surface of the table, and I'm going to press OK. It raises the bit slowly. Once it makes connection, it stops and drops it back down a tad, and it asks, do you want to accept these results? Okay, so now you have your 0 for your bit. So now I'm going to remove my magnet temporarily. I'm going to put my collet back, or my cover back in, throat plate back in, and now I want to run the fence calibration. So I will press run fence calibration, press to run, comes up with the same saying you need the touch plate accessory. Make sure it is plugged in. You need to plug it into the side of the pendant here. Press OK, and now you go into controls. Go into controls, and I'm going to raise the bit to above the surface, and I'm going to move the fence closer so it doesn't have to move so far while it's running the calibration. So I'll do that real quick. Lift up to about there. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then fence minus to bring it closer to the bit to about there. And then I'm going to attach the magnet to the bit again. I'm going to place my plate back here, and then I'm going to press OK, and it will come up to perform the confirm the connection again. So I'll just simply lean my bit forward, and it turns red. When it comes back, press OK to begin movement. So I'm going to hold my plate here, and I'm going to press OK. Moves the fence forward, touches, backs up, asks if you want to accept these results. And now it's set, so all I do is I go in to here, I back out of everything. I go into my lift, and I want it at 1/2 inch, so 0.5 move. It drops the bit to 1/2 inch. And I want my fence at 0.475 because I'm cutting a rabbet in plywood, and we all know plywood isn't exactly 1/2 inch, and I've got 1/2 inch plywood. I took my calipers to it, it's 0.475, and I hit move, and it moves the fence to 0.475. Now, one of the really cool features about this, because now, and I'm set up to ready to go, I can just turn the router on and run my board across. One of the really cool features about this, though, is if I go in here to setup, so for example, right now I have my bit reference point to the front of my bit, so on this side. I can set it to the front, the middle, or the back. So you see right now, we'll make this easy. I'll move it to 0.5 so you can see it better. All right, so I've got it both set at 0.5 inches. But let's say that I want to change the reference point on my bit. All right, so let's say I want to change it to the center. So I come in here to setup, reference bit, and you see 1 equals front edge. I come in here, so 1 equals front, 0 equals center, 2 equals back. So I want to change it to, let's say the back at first. So I hit 2, okay, exit. I'm at 0.000 because the fence is lined up perfectly with the back end of the bit. And it has a little B right there to show what it's referencing. So I come back in here, go to setup, reference bit, back edge, and I want to 0 this time, so I want it to line up with the center. So okay, back out. Now I'm at 0.25. If I move it to 0, well, I'm at 0.25, and you see this little C right there for the center. If I want to move it to 0, move, it lines the fence up with the center of the bit, so forth and so on. That is one really cool feature. You don't have to worry about that when you're actually setting up. It's when you go to cut. So if you normally reference to the center of your bit, but in this instance, I need it to reference to the front of the bit because I want to cut from, I don't want it to cut any deeper than the front where I have the front of the bit at in reference to the fence. So in that case, I would change mine back to the front, which is 1, okay. And now you see it says I'm at 0.25. If I move it back to 0.5, it moves it to the back of the bit. That's one of the really cool features. Another cool feature is everyone knows how, when you're cutting rabbets, especially with rabbets, you will, let me get this out of the way real quick. Okay. You will set it up to exactly where you think it needs to be. You run your piece across, and then when you go to put the two parts together, you'll notice that it, instead of being flush like you want it to be, you didn't go quite deep enough. So you put it together, you run your finger across, you still feel a little bit of a lip. On a regular router table, you would have to loosen up your fence, take your board again, or your tape measure or whatever, and move your fence slightly to get a little, to sneak up on it, so to speak. Everybody loves to say, sneak up on your exact measurement. So let's say that I do this, and I set mine to point. So I know my width is, my thickness is 0.475. But let's say I go to 0.47 instead. So I've got my bit set to 0.4, my fence set to 0.47. I run my board across, I check it, and there's still a little bit of a lip there. I can actually sneak up on this a lot more accurately than I can using a manual fence, because I'm at 0.47. I know I need to go a little bit deeper, so, but I don't know exactly how much, so I set it to 0.471. It moves it to 0.471. I run it again. If I need to sneak up a little bit more, 0.472, so forth and so on. Now you can't see the fence move at 1/1000th of an inch, but it does. You can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can when it does it. So let's say that I go to 0.4 instead, all right? I run my board across at 0.4. That's way wrong. And I know it's closer to 0.47, 0.475. So I come in here and I go 0.475. Now you can see it move. Slightly, right? 7/7 of an inch, 7.5 hundredths of an inch is a little bit more significant, but it's still not that much. That's the beauty of it. You can creep up on your exact measurement by 1/1000th of an inch each time. That's extremely difficult to do with the manual fence. So, but this video is about the setup. So the setup, as you can see, it didn't take long at all. And the more you use this system, the quicker you will get at it. I got it down, when I first started using this system, it took me roughly 3 minutes to get it set up. That's only because I didn't know what buttons I was touching. But now I do, so, and you saw it takes me roughly a minute to get it set up and ready to go. And if you want to go back and check the calibrations, I can guarantee you they are dead on. Once you know what you're doing, it doesn't take any time at all. Okay, so there you have it. You saw that it takes me roughly a minute to get it set up and ready to go. It can take a little bit longer depending on what you're doing and whatnot, but the longest I've ever actually had it take since I've gotten used to it is 3 minutes, and that was cutting a fairly complicated cut and getting everything set up. I was cutting a dado into some cedar, and I needed to make it wider and deeper, and I needed to set up the program inside of the pendant to do what I wanted to do without having to stop everything and reset and whatnot. For me, this is way faster than a normal router table. The reason being is because you have to get your tape measure out, you have to measure, you have to mark your board exactly where you want the cut to be, and you have to line everything up. With this, I just get my measurements ahead of time, figure out where I need everything, and I go through and I set it up. Yeah, so as you can see, it takes me about a minute to get it set up, and I'm cutting boards. That's not bad at all. That's huge. I mean, again, it would take me a good 10-15 minutes to get my router table set up, and then I had to check it like 3 or 4 times to make sure. With this system, I know that once I have it set up, I put it to the measurement that I want. If it cuts in the wrong place, or it cuts too deep or not wide enough, that's my fault. I set it up wrong. The table didn't move, the fence didn't move, the bit didn't drop or lift or anything of that nature, and yeah, that's on me. That's not on the system. So there you have it. So until next time, guys, happy creating. Hi, girls. Hi, puppies.